Now, the UK has officially left the European Union. The British government is looking at a new trade deal.
Last week, the country's Foreign Secretary, Dominic Raab, visited Australia to formally begin negotiations. Joining us now is David McCredie, Chief Executive Officer of the Australian-British Chamber of Commerce. That was a successful visit?
It was a great visit. It was terrific to have him here so soon. It was the first country that he visited after the UK formally left the European Union. I'll just correct your intro. Haven't quite formally started the negotiations yet. We're nearly there.
Yep.
Simon Birmingham has made it clear the Australian side has our mandate ready to negotiate. The UK government haven't confirmed theirs yet, but we're nearly there. But it was an important...
That is the minutiae of life, though, David.
Well, it is. But
I know you've got to point it out.
These are technicalities that we have to be across, Tim.
Of course.
Unfortunately, these days. But it was a terrific visit by Raab. Actually, just around the corner at AstraZeneca, he planted, along with the CEO and global chair of AstraZeneca and Susan Lee, the Environment Minister, planted the first 3 of 50 million trees that AstraZeneca are going to plant worldwide, 25 million of them here in Australia. Then he came and spoke at a lunch for us at the Australian-British Chamber of Commerce. We had a really interesting insight into where he sees things going and how he feels about the Australian-UK relationship. And then did a great session on green finance and looking at how we can support climate change issues here in Australia. So it was a really good conversation. Obviously, that's a key issue for the UK leading up to COP26 in Glasgow later this year.
And now, of course, the big news that Sajid Javid resigned basically just weeks before the budget, which is, well, it was meant to be on March 11. It probably might shift now. But what do you think the consequences will be for the government and for the UK?
Look, I think, to be honest, the way that Johnson's shown his leadership to be is he's pretty clear about how he wants to go about things. He's obviously got a very strong political advisor in Dominic Cummings, who's pretty exacting on what he wants out of the advisor teams within the political offices, if you like, of those posts. And clearly that's an important part of how you put a budget together. And I don't think that they were seeing eye to eye. There was some talk about trying to merge the two and have a sort of 10 and 11, as they call it, in Downing Street, the Treasurer at 11, or the Chancellor at 11, and obviously the Prime Minister at number 10, and trying to build those teams in a much closer way. To be honest, Sajid Javid's always been quite an independent thinker. He came here to Australia a few times over the last few years, and he's always had some very good thoughts of his own, and I don't think he liked being controlled too much.
Look, the nature of the election and the way it went, he's got a very strong mandate across a lot of areas, hasn't he, Boris Johnson? He's in a very strong position.
Absolutely, and when you consider the political turmoil in the UK over the last 10 years, I mean, it's very different, obviously, to what we've had here in Australia. But in 2010, David Cameron won a majority in had a coalition government with the Lib Dems. He then, in 2015, won a majority in his own right, but it wasn't very many. Theresa May then lost that majority and had to partner up with the DUP to maintain government. He's now got an 80-seat majority. As the Prime Minister said, it's a stonking majority, and it allows him to get on with his mandate and with his agenda from what he put forward to the people before the election. And
talk to us about the newly appointed Rishi Sunak. That's a big move for him.
Yeah, he seems to be quite the capable character, though. He's a youngish man. I can say that. He's a little bit younger than me.
Late 30s, yeah.
And I'm unfortunately not that side of 40 anymore, nor 30 for that matter. But he's an MBA from Harvard. He's well groomed for this position. Was right-hand man to Sajid Javid previously. So in a good position to take that role forward, I think.
Now, it's been wandering around for a little while now. What do you make of the phone call that Donald Trump hanging up on Boris Johnson, a lot of it to do with Huawei and 5G?
Look, it's a really interesting issue, and we've had that issue and we've discussed that issue here in Australia. In Australia, along with all but the UK in our Five Eyes partners, which is our closest security grouping, Canada, the US, the UK, New Zealand and ourselves. Everybody else has put Huawei on the back bench. However, the UK have been open to using them, and there are some concerns, clearly from the other countries, about what that may do to compromise their security and their infrastructure going forward. What do I make of Donald Trump hanging up? Well, I think, Donald Trump's Donald Trump. He's been seen to do things that others probably wouldn't, but he's also generally shown himself to be pretty happy to pick up the phone, a few days later or a couple of weeks later and get on with things. So I think it was just probably a moment of passion.
All right, let's talk trade deals. We are in the transition period for quite a few months now, but reading on your website, some great articles there. The UK is hoping to get some early trade deals for Australia, New Zealand, Japan and the US. How's it all going?
Well, slowly at the moment, to be honest. So the key piece that needs to get into place is the UK and EU deal. What are they going to do going forward? Because obviously they've been in a very tight relationship as part of the bloc. What will the future relationship look like? And where they're up to at the moment, the EU, I haven't seen any news on it yet this morning. I suspect they're still talking about it, but our ambassadors were talking about the EU mandate for that negotiation in Brussels overnight, having done that several times this week. So they'll get on with that fairly quickly. We're very hopeful that the UK will also approve a mandate to negotiate with Australia, and potentially that could kick off as early as March. That would give us a few months before the end of the year, between March and probably November, December time, to try and get a deal in place that could kick off on the 1st of January next year, when the UK have actually finished the transition period and are able to put it in place.
Huge story this morning here in Australia, looking at the influx of Chinese students and maybe them not coming. The coronavirus, the World Health Organisation has again stressed that it is very much a Chinese problem at the moment, and we don't want to underplay it. But how is that fitting into the British dialogue right at the moment and the news cycle?
Well, similar to us, I think, everybody's concerned. A virus like this, we've seen SARS in the past and avian flu and swine flu and others. Pardon me.
As you cough.
Yeah, it's certainly not coronavirus.
No, I understand.
But look, these sorts of issues are significant for the world, certainly, but I think the normal sorts of steps are being taken. People are very clear on how that works. I think the only interesting thing from the UK's perspective, compared to, as a compare and contrast with where we're at, is they have a gentleman who apparently contracted coronavirus in Singapore, and they're waiting for the test results to be cleared, hopefully. But they're concerned that there may be a second place where somebody has contracted it rather than from the source itself.
Yeah, well, we certainly haven't heard the end of that. Well, a big week in the UK, and certainly with the resignation of Sajid Javid. Just finally, what role do you think that he will play in the backbench? Like, obviously, Boris Johnson's got a huge majority, but how will that play out, do you think?
Look, I think Boris has got a very strong support. The number of new MPs who owe their job to the way he campaigned at the last election means I can't see a fracturing or splintering of the party, as some might suggest. It's never a good look when the Chancellor, who's meant to be basically, they live in basically the same building, they're meant to be best buds, and it's never a great look when those two part company. But I don't think that Sajid Javid is likely to be a nuisance on the backbench. I think there may be some time for reflection, and you never know what the next reshuffle might bring.
Your role and your organisation's role, you need to stay bipartisan because you have to deal with both sides of government when they're in power. But it would seem good for Great Britain at the moment, for him and his government to have this mandate, particularly with a difficult time. Like, you want to be able to get things done when you need so much done over the next, say, 12 months to 2 years.
Well, that's right. They've got to get everything sorted by the end of the transition period at the end of December this year. So they need to be able to be really clear on what their positions are. They need to be clear on what they will or won't negotiate on. And they need to know that when they bring that back to the Parliament, that they're going to have the numbers to support it. And clearly that was the problem that Theresa May had, was she just wasn't able to carry those numbers through from where her negotiated position was with the EU to actually pass the Parliament. With an 80-seat majority, with a clear mandate from the people of Britain giving him that 80-seat majority, he's got the roadway and the opportunity to actually execute his plan for the next step in terms of that EU-UK free trade agreement, and then how he negotiates with the rest of the world.
And just finally, would you like to tell our viewers your website? Because there are some really good stories on there.
Absolutely. It's britishchamber.com. And it's got lots of stuff on there. But one of the things I'd love to encourage people to do is, right now, the most important thing is for our business people here in Australia and for UK businesses that operate here to have a look at your business as usual. We've been doing things the same way for 40-odd years. Now's the time to look at all those things that might be little impediments in your business, whether it's a tariff on passenger vehicles, whether it's a luxury car tax, which is not necessarily within a free trade agreement but could be negotiated alongside. Those are the things that we need to understand, and we'd love people to give us that information so that we can help inform the negotiators and get a better deal for our businesses, both for Australian businesses going to the UK but for UK investment coming here too.
Brilliant.
Give your feedback.
Absolutely.
Sounds great.
Thanks, David.